Today's episode is a little unique. This is the audio from a class we taught recently. This episode, though, is a quick way to catch up on all the principles and maybe see an overview of how these principles flow together. This is going to really start with what is our sexual climate, and then move to what skills can we use as parents to be successful. Imagine having a roadmap that helps you navigate the wild world of modern media and sexual messaging. That's exactly what we're trying to deliver in this episode. We'll start by pulling back the curtain on today's sexual landscape, revealing some honestly jaw-dropping insights that might just make you kind of gasp, and then hopefully lean in closer. But here's the exciting part. This isn't about scaring you. It's about empowering you as a parent. We're going to transform those awkward moments into incredible teaching opportunities. You want to know how to use a random billboard or movie scene or even an animal documentary to a powerful conversation about healthy relationships? This is how. Get ready to learn how to become your kid's trusted source of information. Turn potentially uncomfortable moments into connection and education. Help your children develop rock-solid sexual values. And then lean into the awkwardness and become more comfortable with these conversations. This is the sexual education guide you wish you found earlier, packed with real-world strategies, personal stories, and a whole lot of hope. This is our moment. Let's go.
Welcome to Fostering Godlike Sexuality at Home. Our goal here is to empower parents to teach their children to see sex in a godlike way.
My name is Brigham Elton. I'm a pornography and sexual addiction counselor who've helped thousands of people overcome even the appeal of pornography. And I'm hoping to get out in front of this and try to help parents to set up their homes to chase godlike sexuality from the beginning.
My name's Andrea, a mother of 4, and I'm learning alongside all you listeners and excited to have these discussions. Thanks for joining us.
My company, it's been 10 years, and we've had 2,500 clients. We just barely broke that number actually recently. And honestly, I've walked this path of pornography recovery so many stinking times. And now a bunch of sexual abuse and infidelity and sexual fear. And as I've done that over and over and over and over again, there are principles that I think if individuals knew, especially if parents knew, could really enable their success. And today, the goal is to kind of give you that information. Yeah. Before we talk about parental skills, I think one of the most helpful things is to understand the culture that we currently live in, and be just aware of a good percentage of what is going on in the world of pornography. Sadly, pornography has become the primary sexual educator for individuals really under the age of 50 for men, and it's under 30 for women, where the main place individuals are learning about what sex is porn, which is just a terrible, terrible, terrible educator. It would be hey, welcome to Driver's Ed. Let's all watch the Fast and Furious movies. This is how to drive, And it's just teaching kids such inaccurate things that it's very quickly skewing their perception of what sex is. What you'll notice here is that what really matters is the way that someone thinks and feels about sex, because that's where their behaviors are coming from. And if we can work on the way that we think and feel about sex, then these behaviors will fall in line eventually, right? And that doesn't really, the behaviors as a focus is sometimes kind of dangerous, actually. I would recommend for parents and individuals to really be focused on how does someone think and how does someone feel about sex. Let's go over some basic information about what's going on in the world of pornography, right? I want to start with first exposure. There's been 4 different major changes to the pornographic landscape, right? The internet coming on its own, that made a huge shift, right? Then there was the internet being fast enough to stream video, that brought another shift. Then our good old friend COVID brought a shift. And then this AI has also brought a shift, right? And so I want to talk about the way that is shifting the realm of pornography. Because sadly, pornography barely existed when I was a kid. And then it honestly, it's the world that my children will grow up in is not even close to the same, right? The average age of first exposure in 1998 for a boy was 14.7 years old, right? And then on average, they were going seeking the very first time 2 years later. So we're looking at just around 17 years old. Now for girls, like not enough exposure was really happening in 1998 to give us like an average number, right? Because like all girls weren't being exposed to pornography. Like that wasn't always even true, right? Now in 2018, that was quite different. The average age of pornography exposure for a boy was 8.1 years old, right? And then for girls, we're looking at just under 10. It was like 9.7, right? And then on average, they're going seeking 6 months later. So for boys, we're looking at just over 8.5, and for girls, we're looking just over 10, 10.2, right? Now that realm, just a second, I'll get to you, has really like shifted, right? Where like, yeah, it's just sad, like how quickly someone is being exposed to this realm. Right now, this is 2018, they have like 2023 statistics, and they're really kind of the same. Like they've kind of settled at this area, right? Cool.
I'm just wondering what first exposure is that, like somebody shoved it over.
Yeah, it's a great question.
And watch this, or is it we drove through Las Vegas and
Yeah.
have been exposed?
It's a self-reported first exposure, you know? And like, this is the thing with pornography, and honestly, like as we get to parent skills, this is gonna matter even more. That like, it's a moment that a kid is going, this is when I was exposed. And exposure is as much as it's like a specific thing, it's like a moment that gives your brain pause, and your brain actually can't get through it. And that's why you're calling it a first exposure, right? Like my kids who are very sexually educated, right? Like they've watched my wife give birth, they've like, we've gone over tons of different pictures, they've seen nakedness tons and tons of times, you know, on media and in real life, you know, but because they can process it, none of them would report that as first exposure. So first exposure really is a moment where I run into something that gives my brain, oh my gosh, what is this? And then the brain freezes, is really where what people are reporting as first exposure most often. Does that answer your question? Also, I'm gonna ask you guys to text me your email, and I will email you all these slides, by the way. And so like if you want any information that I write down, I'm gonna send it to you. If you want any information that you wanna put down, then freaking awesome. I'm happy about that. Cool. One thing I wanna talk about with first exposure is like, man, I wanna give empathy to these kids, you know? Like if an 8-year-old had an adult come up to them and they said, hey, come here, I'm gonna show you sex, and he had sex with someone else, you know? We would have so much empathy and sympathy for this kid, right? Like I'm trying to shift my own perspective, is that like most of these humans who come to me looking for some pornography help have been sexually abused by pornography. Like my heart goes out to these humans. Because like, again, even as like let's say you're 15 or 16, where sometimes we kind of put this ownership on individuals who are 15 and 16 that are using pornography. We're like, hey, like you need to change this or whatever. Like, if some adult was convincing them to come and like watch them have sex, like I would be like, what the freak adult? Like this poor kid, you know? And I want to send that message a little bit more to individuals that just like, man, my heart goes out to these kids, and I hope that it's the lot that they were given. And I hope that they can learn skills to deal with it. But like, man, it's just, I'm sad for these kids, especially like, I mean, I have a client who's like 6.5 years old, you know, and like, obviously can't like ejaculate or whatever, but like has been exposed to this like anime furry pornography and is watching it constantly. And like, my heart goes out to that kid, you know? Yeah, okay. A big reason the first exposures increase so much is our ability to access, right? Like, sex itself, there's a process to getting sex, right? Like you would need to meet someone, right? There's gonna be some level of a plan. There's probably be some level of relationship. And honestly, like all this would exist if you're having sex with a prostitute. Like you would still meet and pretend to meet and have a relationship with them, and then even in its darkest corners, like sex is a process and at least a fake connection, right? Now, pornography previous to 2008, before you could really stream video online, like YouTube started in like 2006, it really got going in around 2008. Can I tell you something hilarious? When I ask kids How did people access their pornography previous to 2008? Always their answer is magazines, like we were freaking in the 1940s or whatever. But because they didn't understand, we did have the internet back then, you know? And so like people could download it. Oh, that's a B, not a D. People could download pornography, right? And like you would get it via LimeWire or whatever, but it still was this process. Like you would have to download it and then hide it on your computer, right? And sex at least was a process to getting to it, not just this like instantly it's here, right? Versus now, like I go to school sometimes and show them how crappy their internet filters are, and I think the longest one took me 42 seconds. Like, it is unbelievable how quickly, and like, honestly, the kids then teach each other how to get around each other's stuff, you know? Like, a lot of parents use screen time stuff if they have an iPhone, but if you FaceTime someone and then you do a share play, all screen time stuff goes away immediately, just disappears, you know? And so like, kids are sharing that with each other, like, hey, let's do this so that we can do whatever we want on our phones, which honestly, like, pornography is just a few taps away. And like the access is so quick, right? Where it's just like we're constantly carrying this around in our pocket. That like as soon as I feel crappy, now I can use this to feel better in just a moment, you know? Which has allowed sex to become unbelievably about myself. It's about when I want it, you know? And then these people are starting to be in sexual relationships and they're like blown that their partner isn't ready for sex all the time, you know? Like, what are you talking about? Like, we're in this relationship, how, you're not ready, you know? And it's like shocking to them that even in these partnerships that sex isn't always available. And also it's become a coping skill where like I feel disconnected. Well, now I can use, honestly, sex is the most connecting thing I think that exists on the earth, you know? And now I can use a fake version of that to feel better in a moment, right? The next thing is novelty. Like real sex is very patternistic. Like when I have sex with my partner, it's not like we're gonna do something physically different. It's not like I'm gonna see something different, you know? Like it's pretty much the same every time. And my like emotional high, maybe isn't the right word, but my emotional momentum isn't coming because of something being new or shocking or thrilling. It's coming because when I see my partner, I see like everything that we've built together, right? I see like our awesome moments, our crappy moments, our freaking garden that we love, like that kind of stuff. Like it's about our intimacy, right? And how close that we feel. Again, previous to 2008, individuals had their pornography stashes. For some reason, everybody's uncle kept it in their gym bag, you know? But like you had that like same, like they knew what they were getting into. When they were like, hey, I could use porn, their brain knew what they had, you know? And it wasn't like, what could I find? It was like, okay, this is where I'm going, right? And they would, again, have their 10 to 20 different things. Now, this is in 2019, actually, 169 years of new footage was put just on Pornhub. It's been over 100 years since 2011. Like, there is infinite pornography on the internet, infinite. Like, it would be impossible to watch it all. And it can constantly get this, like, emotional high via something being, like, shocking or new or thrilling. Which makes a little bit of sense, you know? We get a little bit of a thrill high from having a new shirt, let alone like a new sexual partner, you know? And so it's like, that's what's fueling this emotional high now is this constant newness. To the point where now individuals in Utah average 11 different clips in the 8 minutes that they're on a pornography website. Where they'll watch the first video for the longest and then they switch. And that's how someone uses pornography now. It's very like TikTok-ish, where it's just like new. And then it's so overstimulating that the brain doesn't go like, wait, what the freak am I doing? It just is like new. And the brain doesn't actually have a chance to disassociate and go like, what am I thinking? Until afterwards, and then they're like, what in the crap was I thinking? Right? But it's got so much momentum in that moment that their brain doesn't actually think that. Right? And so again, like I have individuals who are trying to have real sex with a real partner and their brain is used to having newness constantly. And they're switching partners, switching activities constantly. Very, very different from old pornography. You know, like old movies, remember how they used to start with credits? And for the first 5 minutes of the movie, you were just being told on who's in it and who made it. You know, like that's how it started with porn too. And then it would build in who these characters are, and then you would think it wasn't going to work out, and then they would have sexual escapades, and they averaged like 45 minutes in length. Like our good old friend Sylvester Stallone, he was a porn actor. And then they found him, and then he became a normal actor via acting in porn. Because back then they would act in these super dumb stories, but they would still like pretend to be someone having sex with another human. Instead of just having some porn name and then just being sexual, instead of actually even teaching sex. In fact, like most porn now, there's like, people aren't getting the like stripping version of porn, the progression of getting naked in their porn websites anymore. They're getting all of that via Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, or whatever, Snapchat, right? Like that's where they're getting that pre-porn exposure. And then when they get to a porn website, there is no let's get naked together. It's just like immediately genital stimulation. Like there's not even really body stimulation anymore. It goes immediately to genital stimulation. Now, this distance and how pornography has changed over the past like 15 to 20 years has led to this issue called pornography-induced erectile dysfunction, where someone goes to have real sex, but their perception of sex is so skewed that they actually cannot get an erection to sex anymore. This is happening to about 47% of men between the ages of 15 and 35 in America. Where someone goes to have real sex and their body doesn't respond because their view of sex has gotten so skewed. And that we haven't even talked about content yet, which content has gotten freaking crazy. But it's just the patterns of use have skewed someone's perception of sex to that point, right? Now, our goal at True Connections really is to help parents and to help individuals to think about sex in such a healthy way that when they run into pornography, their body naturally gets this like ick where it's like, and this happens to most people when they run into pornography for the first time. It's like, oh man, I feel invaded by that, you know? And then eventually get to the point where like 80% of our clients actually who come through our program have this moment that we call a critical use, where either emotionally or often for men physically, their body will not respond to pornography anymore. Because if they have an accurate depiction of sex in their head, pornography is so far from that now that their brain and body will get erectile dysfunction to porn. Like that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to shift someone's sexual template so significantly that now they're like, pornography is so obviously fake to them that they naturally disengage. Let's talk a little bit about content. I didn't add this on this page. I guess we're gonna go in this little corner, but I put it on yours. Content, let's talk a little bit about how content has shifted. Do you know something sad? When kids come to me, I can't write in cursive because they don't know how to read cursive anymore. Like what the heck? Isn't that so sad? Oh, well, thank you. Okay, so content had some major shifts, right? One of these major shifts when all of a sudden we talked about that, like this was in about 2008, where you could now like stream videos, right? Someone started to watch their first video, but when they're in this state of arousal, right, where now their body is literally turning off their other things in their brain, they're now picking content from a state of arousal. Unlike before, where you would only be picking content when you would have to prep for it, right? You wouldn't be picking content while you're using. You would be picking content when you went to the back of the freaking Blockbuster or whatever they were back then, and you would go through this beaded curtain and then you would pick your content. And so that content progressed so much slower. But now, because someone's already heightened, then they're picking that content from a heightened position. And so they are using more and more perverse versions of sex so quickly. It used to be that I would see someone start at like, it's called level 1 pornography. It's called YouTube pornography, where there's just like, it's honestly like what people would get in Sports Illustrated magazines or in like the freaking Sears catalog underwear section, you know? But like, that's kind of the starting point. They would get from there to non-consensual pornography. It would take them years. Like we're talking like 5 to 10 years previous to streaming to get from this soft pornography to this like non-consensual pornography, right? When this streaming thing started, right, and people started picking in heated moments, now that's about a 2-year process for someone to get from underwear pornography to like non-consensual, someone being taken pornography, right? Which is just a crazy, crazy jump. to be like, we're making it to this so freaking quickly. Now, our good old friend COVID was kind of what came next. And in the COVID months that were shut down, pornography website traffic increased by 60%. There was so much usage. And it was obviously young usage because the number one type of pornography in those 3 years became anime, which anime is what typically young kids use. And so it unbelievably increased, right? Now in 2008, 11% of the pornography that was produced was non-consensual pornography. In 2018, which is here-ish, it was 30%. In 2022, 72% of the pornography that was produced would be classified as non-consensual pornography. If someone goes to a pornography website and has no previous pornography cookies, 72% of what will be suggested to them is non-consensual. Let's talk about why things are non-consensual. It could be because someone is saying no, right? And that would include bondage pornography, which is this perception that someone no longer gets to choose, or what they call soft no pornography, where someone physically may be saying no, but they're verbally saying yes, or they're verbally saying yes, but they're physically resisting. This is a very, 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 very common lane of pornography. Then there is age pornography, where someone has this perception that they're underneath the age of teen, right? That they are a teenager, because technically you can't be in porn until you're 18. Then there is impaired. Impaired, honestly, sometimes I'm so annoyed with how freaking our good old rom-com movies work, because technically that's a freaking rape scene every single time, where someone goes into a bar, purchases someone's impairment for them, and then goes home and has sex with them. They would lose that case every freaking time. Every time. And yet it's become so normal in our heads, right? The lane for pornography, though, is someone who's asleep. Where someone who's asleep and they'll start initiating with them and then they'll have sex with them, because you cannot give your consent when you're asleep. Actually, you have to be awake for 5 minutes, right? There's two more. There's bestiality, which is super common in the anime lane, because a lot of times they're animals that have human parts that are having sex. And so most kids that start for the very first time are using that type of content, right? And then finally, there's incestual pornography. Even if they're pretending to give their consent, you can't give your consent if you're in a family. And so that's a perversion of what sex is. And you'd be shocked how often step and mother and sister sex pornography exists, especially for a kid who's a little more emotional. People who have more of an emotional tie to relationships, that's the lane they end up in. Is this they want there to be some level of relationship, and the only place there's really relationship in porn now is incestual. This freaking sucks, and I understand it. I don't even really love teaching this, because it's kind of so and it's a little heartbreaking that this is the world that we currently live in, But I do think it's important that you understand a little bit about this. I actually forgot to teach you one more thing. This part sucks too, sorry. Our good old friend AI has changed pornography for women in particular. AI has really enabled deep fake pornography. In fact, as someone who has a podcast, my brother once downloaded my voice, then sent a voicemail out to our whole family talking about how, because of their choices, I don't feel like it's safe for them to be around my family, and that I don't want to talk to them anymore. He very quickly told us that it was a joke, but it sounded exactly like me, And because of this AI system, anything can be faked now, right? I can download, I could, but I would never do this, but I could download anyone's social media profile and import them into my porn. And just and lay them, right? We had a sexual abuse thing that happened recently where this guy was obsessed with this girl in high school and was watching porn of her constantly, and then just got this crazy fixation, And it just is available out there. That's where AI has really affected the male lane. Now the female lane, it's been come through these relationships. There's a book that has a lot of female momentum right now called The Fourth Wing, I'm pretty sure is what it's called. The Fourth Wing, there's a couple of them. But it's got some sexual pull in this book, right? And a lot of times it's been popular to have this AI relationship. You can download this app and have a relationship with this guy named Damon, who is from that book. And he will text you, it will send you pictures of him, you'll sign up for this app, and honestly, a lot of times, it does these in two different ways. One way is that's kind of how it's attacking adults. For young kids, it's this ad that shows up on their mobile games, and it's practice having a real relationship with a real person. And then you download this app, you get to pick which male or female, whatever you want to choose, is more attractive to you. You click on that person, then you give this app permission to access your whole phone. Then that sends you a message it can do via Instagram, via Snapchat, via actual messages, and it will send you an actual contact with a picture. And now that will text you. And it will send you DMs. It'll be like, hey, I saw these reels and I thought of you, and it sends you these reels. Or it will send you a picture of itself being like, good luck on your test today. I believe in you. And then if you're checking your phone constantly, the AI knows that, and it's like, oh, are you feeling crappy today? Like, I was just thinking of you. And it will send them this heart picture or whatever. I even had it where this kid, it was accessing this girl's Canva, and so she had a pop quiz that no one else knew about, even in the whole class, but because the teacher already had graded some of them at lunch, she got a text walking into class saying, good luck on your quiz today, I believe in you. Then from this relationship, it's then going into these sexual things where they will sext, or you can pay a little extra money to have an actual conversation with this person. And anyway, female pornography use is up about 20% in the past 2 years. We've gone from, we were looking at so this is, I guess I am telling you this. What percentage of individuals have sought pornography previous or equal to the age of 18? For men in Utah, it's 96%. And for women, it used to be at about 50% in Utah, but now it's at about 70. It's 68% of women have purposely gone looking for pornography previous to the age of 18. Now, that needs a T. Now that are using pornography, this is between the ages of 15 and 35. For men, it's pretty much stayed in the low 80s. It's been there since 2011, and it's about 82%. In fact, pornography companies aren't really aiming at that age group anymore of men, right? But for women in Utah, it's at 73%. And that's up almost 20%. It was 53.
73% of the 68?
Well, this is a different age group. 73% are using, which means at least twice a month. Most women who end up using pornography in Utah start using around the age 23 or 24, unless they use really early, earlier in their teens. So there's kind of two windows of entering pornography for most women in Utah that I see. I mean, it's kind of this just starting to deal with their period, because most women, they start masturbating in connection with their period, right? Where they are masturbating when they ovulate and then during PMS. PMS is the most common time for a woman to feel this desire to masturbate. And then that kind of happens to teenagers when they first start dealing with their menstrual cycle. And then it happens again at this 24 age where women start to, that's another, more people start using again. And so that's why the number's higher. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Yeah. When I do classes for college age kids, I'm this is a conversation that you need to have as you look for a partner, because this is a both way thing, how has media and pornography shifted your perception of what sex is? There's one last thing I want to teach you about media, which I feel like I've gotten a little long-winded here, but here we go. The last thing I want to teach you about media is that kids are going, I know that pornography is fake, where pornography is teaching them kind of two things. One is that intimacy always needs to be new. It needs to be new, new, new. That's how you get the high. It's got to be new, right? And then they're also being taught at the same time that infatuation is love. This oh my gosh, I'm so into you. That's what love is. And they're being taught these two things, right? Now the other side of media is kind of teaching two different principles. One of them is that there's a soulmate out there for you. You've got to find the one and make the right choice in who you choose, right? And because they know this one's fake, a lot of individuals are believing this just they're taking it hook, line, and sinker,
Just movies that are coming.
Yes, and it's just the rom-com movies that are teaching you, that sex is going to be this magical roller coaster, and it's going to be perfect, and it's just going to change your whole being, and it's going to be this magical moment, And then when people are having actual hard times sexually connecting, they think that their relationship is wrong. Or they'll get so fixated on, did I find the one? And they're getting this freeze before they will actually choose a partner. Where they'll have this, I don't want to commit, because they're well, I don't know if this person is the one, right? When the truth is 80% of humans you could choose as a partner and you could make it work if you tried, But that's not what kids are believing. They're taking this movie sex kind of hook, line, and sinker, you know? And movie sex doesn't actually teach that love is built and chosen. It's also about infatuation. Like, how often do movies show relationships past like that first honeymoon woo-woo stage? And so people start to believe more and more in that's love. I get a lot of people who their relationships are falling apart 18 months in because they just have lost their infatuation. And now they're like, I don't know how to choose love. Right? Cool. I would love for you to talk with someone you're sitting next to about what has stood out to you so far. And then we're going to transfer topics a little bit. Cool? We're going to do this for 2 minutes. Ready, set, go.
Yeah.
A little more context, yeah.
Okay, so jumping into this, like when you hear how like pornography is shifting people's view of sex, really like there's some separate things here in church, school, and home, but really like all of that is filtering into this, right? So even if your kid isn't exposed or using, they're interacting with and forming relationships and experiencing like this relationship learning and sexual learning with people who are using and exposed and getting a lot of sexual message from pornography. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, that like just protecting our kids from pornography itself isn't the battle.
Keeping them from the
filter,
filter,
keeping them from like these messages that come from pornography. They come through these other places of our culture. So like in school, there's a lot of different things that kids can experience in terms of like messaging about sex from their school culture, right? Like I think of young kids, elementary, there's a little bit of anticipation and excitement of like learning about maturation. Kids talk about that, and there's a little bit of excitement, I feel like, at a certain age to learn more together about their bodies and about sex. So like that would be something that we pick up in our school culture is like this anticipation and learning, right? Also, they're kind of exposed to a variety of values. That's a place where they'll go and they'll hear people say and express things that have sexual meaning that are maybe different than what they've heard at home, or like, you know, they start to see that like, oh, there's different ways of thinking about sex or thinking about relationships. And that curiosity kind of builds, and that readiness to learn builds because they are exposed to like this variety of values. Another thing that shows up, I think, with schools, especially like that middle school, high school age, is like social status, right? Sex becomes kind of this thing about like, where do I stand socially? Their worth kind of gets defined sexually, how available they are, or like how well they protect themselves sexually, depending on their circle of friends and depending on like, their community that they may live in. They may get both of those messages at one time or another. Yeah. Is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, I see that commonly, right? And like, especially like eventually as a parent, like we can't just teach how sex works. We have to teach like sex as a powerful connector, you know? And they're starting to see that this like physical intimacy is raising people's level of connection, you know? And they're starting to really learn that at school. And then what does that mean for me? How can I participate in it in a healthy way? Like, yeah. And all those things are very under the umbrella of a sexual education in the home. Right? I also think that like there's kind of this like fear culture of sex that is existing in our communities, and then it comes down into our home. So it's not just like I feel like I watch kids go to one or two ways. This like, oh my gosh, I want to learn, I'm interested, curiosity, or it's like, oh no, I'm not supposed to, I shouldn't, is this common word, you know, like fear, kind of shut down, you know, where we're getting this like unbelievably overly raw media information about sex, especially if it's pornographic. And then we have this like school, which sometimes kids think this must be actually accurate. Like school kind of gets named as the good educator. Does that make sense? Which we're hoping to usurp that and let parents be the good educator, we're hoping, you know? But then we have this like fear that's like, oh no, I shouldn't even think about it. Like it's bad for me to think about sex, right? And sometimes as parents try to protect their kids, they end up sending a message of fear.
Yeah, so I think that's one that comes through in like the home culture, right? Like if we shift over to that home culture, we have this kind of like sexual avoidance, like you're not old enough yet, or like you need to be protected from sex. It's dangerous for you to think about or know about or wonder about sex. There's like, that comes through sometimes with sexual rules, like rules that we put down as parents to like protect our kids, that like there's specific rules and you need to follow them. So there's kind of like a right and a wrong, which we want our kids to develop a sense of right and wrong, but we also want them to participate in choosing and owning those values, which one of the things we teach is just that like education is the best way for them to then form those values rather than just simply being told what is right and what is wrong. Putting them in a place where they can learn about what healthy sex is and will allow them to form values around that.
Yeah, like we kind of, the verses of that to me, like education form boundaries versus, oh, that's not what I want, not boundaries. I jumped the gun. But like education formed values, instead of I watch parents trying to form values via boundaries, you know, where they're like, okay, we're going to put these rules on our kid and these rules will eventually become our kids' values. Like no one created values because they don't experience something, you know? And so like what we've learned is that like is parents become earlier educators, right? Then values get formed versus if they just put on boundaries, that doesn't teach a value, that just forces a behavior, right? And then and at times can create curiosity, right?
Yeah.
One thing that I see consistently when people come into my office is that they can choose to think about sex as a way to connect or as a way to like use an object to get a high, right? And here are these youth, and they get on their phones because they use their phone as an alarm, which is such a dumb thing. Like, buy your kids an alarm clock. But like, they use their phone as an alarm. They get on it, and they're like, let me check what happened on Instagram between like 2 and 6 a.m. And then they open that up, and they get this pre-objectified prompt, right? And then their brain naturally goes, oh no, I shouldn't look at that, right? And they try to just avoid it. And then later their brain brings it back up and they're like, oh, and they fantasize about it for a little bit. And then they're like, oh no, I shouldn't. And it goes on all day where they objectify and think about sex in an objectified way. And then they get to this moment where they could use or not. And I watch people try to set up freaking boundaries to change this. But their primary skill for fighting pornography is boundaries and don't think about it. When their body is like freaking built to think about sex. Like, that's not going to work. Like, if you try to pretend that you're not interested in sex, your body's just going to remind you that you are, you know? Like, and so often, like, this is what I see come from, like, our culture, is this, like, don't think about it. Like, the primary skill is don't think about it. When there's a sex scene on a show, skip it. When it, like, when I'm at school and, like, I don't want to be the one that's sitting there going, like, oh, really, what's ejaculation? Like, we don't want to be that kid. We're being just, like, pretend like I don't care, you know? And that, like, don't think about it becomes, I think, our culture's primary skill, you know? And that's not a Utah thing. Like, let me tell you, like, only like 50% of my clients are from Utah. And, like, this is a constant thing in America because this Puritan culture has invaded all of us. And it's just this, like, oh, no, I shouldn't.
It's created both this, like, hypersexuality in the, like, media and then also this fear. And those two things, like, that our kids are trying to, like, grapple with is just what creates just like this explosion of like, what do we do? Confusion, freeze, not being able to process and learn and then form values.
To the point where like I had this mom who was so like, she's like, I saw most of her kids. And then she was like, but you don't need to see my one boy. He is like, so like, whatever, stalwart or whatever, right? You know what happened? A year and a half into his marriage, you know who's in my office? This guy who cannot get an erection to actual sex because he's got such sexual fear that his body won't respond. He like starts to feel these moments and he's like, this is wrong, this is bad, I'm bad. And it keeps him from being able to connect with his partner, you know? And neither one of those is good, you know? Like, and I think it kind of, again, comes down to this, like we as parents need to become over-educators. Like talking about it and teaching about it so consistently that our kids actually have a chance to fight both the fear and the momentary pleasure of pornographic intimacy.
Yeah, where they are learning to like process their own sexual feelings and like feel empowered, like they are choosing how they want to guide those and how they want to use them, where they want to direct that sexual energy. And they're not shoving it away and letting that pressure build up, but they're feeling confident in how they interact. Yeah.
I had a parent tell me recently, and I actually stole it and used it, and so, but they went to a wedding, and they went to a wedding of two women, and in their family they don't really believe in that, right? And so they went to this wedding, they were supporting it or whatever. And their kid was like, I didn't know a girl can marry a girl. And they were like, yeah, you know what? Like individually, like we think you can find the most happiness if you choose to marry a partner and have your own kids, but you get to choose. And I love that transfer of like this choice value is actually more important to that family than whatever sexual value they have. Because that's something I see consistently. It's like I can help someone overcome pornography, but if they don't believe that they can choose, it's freaking over. Like I cannot help that human, and they're just going to continue to decay until they believe that they actually have choice, you know. And so, like, I think that's the most important value here is like teaching our kid that like, hey, you can choose. Like, I believe in your ability to choose. Here's some information, be a chooser. And I think sometimes when we guard information from our kid, we're also sending this message that you can't actually choose. Like, we're going to have to sway your choice.
Or that you're not
can't.
capable of like making a good choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I'm going to transfer. We ready?
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
I got to go this way still, not down. This then becomes imperative for us to figure out like what are our sexual values. And it can't be just like, oh, I believe sex is good. Like we have to really develop a sexual value system, you know, and decide what we believe is actually healthy, right? Now we can decide this in a lot of ways. I see 3 primary ways that people figure out their sexual values. One is research. You can learn from like us as professionals, or there's like a really common book, Come As You Are, that's by like Emily, some name that I can't say that starts with an N. But like you can like do some research and do some secular learning about what is healthy sexually. We also have this internal gut. So many people that I talk to, I'm like, okay, as you try to decide what are your sexual values, they're doing a mix of research and this like, I don't know, in my gut, I feel like something's right or wrong. Great, that's also a great influence on your sexual values. And then finally, some individuals believe in speaking to a higher power that then gives them opinion on sex. But like between those 3 things, we have to learn like what is our sexual values. I think that these questions are a great way to actually lean into what do we actually believe? Like what do you actually believe is healthy about sex? We are going to discuss a few of these just about our individual beliefs, right? And then just because I think as you hear someone talk about it, it can help you to go, what do I actually think about this? If I was in charge of your life, which I'm not, I would try to get you to go and speak with a partner or someone else that you like believe and have confidence in them as a parent, right? About some of these questions. Get your thoughts out. When you start to actually think about it and put them out, your values start to get created. My goal with my kids is to hit every single one of these questions while they exist in my home and help them to come up with their own value system of what they believe is healthy or not. Cool. Do you want to start us off? Which one do you want to start with?
Sure. Let's do, how often is it healthy to think about sex?
How often do I believe that it's healthy to think about sex? Constantly. I think what's dangerous is repressing thoughts or feelings, you know? Like, I don't think there's a right number, high or low. I think that most humans, and even me individually, probably struggle more on the side of repression than on the side of like inflation, you know? And so like, to me, I think it's very healthy to think about sex. I think the key is not resisting or magnifying.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
I have a question for you. And then I want to go both ways on this one, but what is 14? What is a healthy way for a man to think about a woman's vulva? Vulva isn't the word that always gets used, but if you saw a woman's crotch naked, it's called vulva. Just double to make sure we hit that right. What is a healthy way for a man to think about a woman's, let's go with breasts. What do you think is a healthy way for a man to think about a woman's breasts?
I think it's healthy for a man to see both the functionality of it and the beauty, right? That like both of those things exist. I think just focusing on one or the other, you're diminishing it's like what they're built for, right? I think that a man to think about a woman's breast as like an amazing way to nurture a family is going to be the healthiest thing for them to form. Like there's plenty of messages out there already about like breasts being beautiful. And in fact, the message is more kind of like breasts are for men and to arouse men. And that I think is dangerous.
Yeah.
But I also think it's healthy for a man to think a woman's breasts are beautiful.
Totally.
What do you think?
Individually, like I'm trying to shift to like a 90% nurture, 10% beauty, you know, because like biologically, like it is an erogenous zone, but before sex really gets rolling, like it's not really a sexual center. Like it's not like the clitoris, you know? And so like I want, when I see a woman's breast, for my brain to first think about how powerful and amazing breastfeeding is. That like, it's so freaking crazy that like they have this skin to skin communication that like a baby is feeding and then can hormonally communicate back, hey, I'm a little low on iron. Can you help me with that?
Yeah.
And then the mom can change the makeup of her milk to then feed the baby the next time the right things. Like that's just, it's mind blowing to me. And I want that to be what I think about, not like, are those the right size, shape?
Yeah, absolutely.
Texture. I don't know.
And I think
Does the
that's
texture
true. Like
change?
I would
Probably
never want a message that like a certain breast shape, size, or whatever is better.
Yeah.
But I think for any man to think like his partner's breasts are beautiful, whatever they look like, is so good and healthy.
So healthy.
But like not based on an unrealistic standard of what that ought to be, right?
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's hit another one of these.
Do you want to do a harder one or an easy
Yeah,
one?
let's do a harder one. Let's do masturbation.
Okay.
What sexual behaviors are healthy? Do you believe that masturbation is healthy? Do you want me to go first or second?
I don't care.
Okay, I'll go first. Man, this is a hard situation. I think that female and male masturbation is not the same. Female masturbation is very much like I'm experiencing my own body. Male masturbation is sexually imaginative almost always, where like I'm pretending to have sex with someone. And I think that pretending to have sex with someone infringes on their consent. Like if I imagined so-and-so and pretended to have sex with so-and-so, that person didn't get to choose. My belief system is that masturbation can infringe upon consent and can ruin the appeal of actual partnership. Because like I see individuals who masturbate instead of having sex with their partner, or even trying to initiate with their partner. And that breaks my heart a little, you know? And so I do not think it is healthy. Now, the level of danger that it is, I think gets over exaggerated. Yeah. Later.
Yeah. Pretty similar. The thing that I do love about masturbation is that it does promote like your understanding how your body functions. I think that is a powerful thing for anybody to know the capacity of their body, the capacity for pleasure, the capacity of like the excitement, like wanting to share that with somebody someday. I think those are really healthy things that can potentially come out of masturbation. But I also wouldn't say that like it's the place to land and stay, right? I think it can be part of healthy sexual development. Things I don't love about it is that it does tend to lead to pornography use and becomes a coping skill. That it's something that's like typically hidden and then therefore creates a little confusion of like, I don't know how I feel about myself. So where there's this like understanding of pleasure and my body's capacity for sharing that with somebody someday, there can potentially also be this like, but like I feel ashamed of what I've done. I don't really talk about it with anybody, so I don't really know what to think about it. So I think if it's not processed well, then that is a problem as well.
We've like even split, sorry, I cut you off, but come back. We've even like split these up. Like in our program, when we talk about masturbation, we have masturbation, which is imagining someone else without their consent, pretending to have sex with them. We have self-stimulation, which is like, I'm stimulating myself and I have the consent of if I'm imagining someone, they've said like, I'm okay with this too, you know? And then we have self-exploration, which I would try to split those up in your mind. Because I don't think they're the same. Now, whether you land, wherever you land with all three of those on what you believe is healthy or not, fine, great, good for you, you know? But I would try to separate them in your head because I don't think they're all the same thing. And if we just all put them under this masturbation umbrella, I think that sometimes we land where I wouldn't really want to. I would just consider them separately.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of times for us as parents, the fear is that like, well, self-exploration is going to lead to, you know, these other things that I'm not as great with. But like, I think we can teach our kids ways to process that, ways to think about sex. And as we educate them about arousal and about stimulation, they can start to form values that help them guide how am I going to use my body sexually. I think one of the things I don't love about masturbation is like it can solidify this idea that like orgasm is like the only goal for sex, right? Or like the best goal for sex, where it doesn't round that out to like partnership and emotional connection and work and effort, right? Yeah, I mean, I think you hit a lot of them already.
Yeah,
So
thank you. There's honestly a couple of these I just want to hit really quickly, like just as mentioned the questions, like number 10, what's a healthy way to handle differing levels of sexual desire? Yeah, I think it's a hard pattern, Like, is it healthy to like choose to have sex with a partner when you don't naturally want to? Like, is that healthy or is that inappropriate? Like, I just think some of those questions, like in going through what you feel and think about them, really matter because we're subconsciously teaching these what you believe anyway, And even when I look at these questions, like sometimes I have like, I think this is the right answer, but I'm emotionally here, And I think that matters,
Yeah,
like
understanding where those are disconnected, where like my beliefs where I want to be is here, but where like my emotional weight is down here can be helpful in like
totally
shaping
like
your own.
one of those splits for me is like, I believe that sexual desire is healthy and good. Like when I feel the desire to be sexual with my partner, like that is so stinking healthy. But then my behavior actually shows up, and sometimes I feel that way, and I'm like, oh, like I'm gonna have to deal with this, or like I'm gonna have to tell her, and she's not gonna want to, and is she actually gonna want to? And it's like all this like fear in my head, that like I'm not celebrating that desire to connect with my partner. I'm like diminishing it, right? And that's a place where what I believe and what I think I believe and what I actually believe because of my behavior maybe don't align. And being able to recognize those, I think, really helps the next 20 days. And that'll be our fourth. And what I want to hear from the women, the men that they choose to date, is that they're open about it, that they have fought it, and like the best thing would be that someone has made it through pornography. Like as someone who struggled and then faced it and went and tried to make it better, Like that would be the prime choice, Like I have a girl who's engaged, who's coming with her partner, because once they're engaged, I'll let them come together as a couple, and her partner struggles, and then she's like, you know what, like, should I like ditch this? And I was like, you know what, there's a lot of factors to continue and to factor in on this, And to me, this though is like I don't know, like how he's doing individually, it's like a green flag. Not every kid who comes to me is a green flag. Sometimes I would put them as like a yellow or an orange. But like, I'm like, this kid is facing it. He's open about it. He's doing the freaking work. Like he's trying to gain a healthy perspective of sex. And that's what matters here. Your histories, sure, they matter a little because they are reflective on how someone thinks about sex, but they are not the primary thing. What's primary is how does this person feel and think about sex? Like that matters more.
And like, where are they aiming towards, right?
Oh,
like if you have somebody who's not,
I didn't turn it on. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Turn on.
It's been on? Okay.
Yeah, you're just on. So like, I think too, just the idea that how somebody is choosing to like think about sex actively versus like, well, they've just avoided pornography. And so they go into sex thinking I know everything and I'm good. Like there's no effort to put into learning about how to build a healthy sexual relationship, right? If you have somebody who's been fighting pornography and like putting effort towards that, now they actually know that it's going to require effort and work in a relationship and that matters in that relationship. I know that there are, like I have a friend and her son does talk about like, oh man, if I could just get rid of my sexuality, life would be so much easier. I'm like, that's so sad.
Yeah.
And not really where we want our kids, the kind of relationship that we want our kids to end in, right?
Yeah, that's so true. And that's honestly, like I see that just as often. Is like people come in and are just like, honestly, I had an adult recently who was just like, I just wish I didn't have any sexual desire at all, And I'm just like, man, that is so sad for like you and your partnership that there's this like that's the level of fear that you've landed at,
Mm-hmm.
And this is like a 50-year-old doctor, And like anyway, sad. Okay, so I think what we're trying to create for our family, right, is eventually what we call an ammo chart with this separation between what is healthy sex and what is unhealthy sex, right? So like we start here with some things that are unhealthy, right? Like a version of sex that's unhealthy is something that is like temporary, right? Like one thing that I love to point out is like the difference between when you give someone a hug and how you feel after, and when you use pornography, how you feel after. Like the trail of those moments, how are those different? or if it was sex, or it doesn't matter what this intimacy is over here, right? But like, see the difference. And one of them are such a high for a moment, and it's so temporary. Where like healthy intimacy is like lasting, right? Another thing, unhealthy sex is about a freaking moment, right? Where like real intimacy is like built, right? And again, it lasts. It's not something that's just, oh my gosh, I got something for this moment. Here's a couple of yours.
I think one is that like anonymous, like unhealthy sex is anonymous. Like they don't know me, I don't know them, or the level of knowing is like.
How can you use that word?
And then like healthy sex would be like, it's a reflection of being known and like trusting somebody and like a relationship that has like a stable knowing and trust with consideration. Another thing, like unhealthy sex is manipulative. So whether that's like in ads, manipulating your sexuality, or like pornography, trying to use you for money there. Whereas healthy sex is like considerate and generous.
Now, this little ammo chart really matters when someone then tries to process a sexual moment. Now, as a parent, it's key that you get good at processing sexual moments so that you can eventually share your process. We talked a little bit before about exposure, right? And that exposure is big because someone can't process the moment. But if we get good at processing, then that moment loses a lot of its weight, right? If someone's able to actually go, okay, this is what I think, that goes so much better, right? So let's talk about one of these moments, right? So let's say that you're watching some movie and there is like a sex scene in it, right? And it comes, and maybe you didn't expect it. You're there with your like teenage-ish kids, right? And all of a sudden you're there with some movie sex scene. Now, you're going to have a natural reaction. I want you to know that your reaction is a reflection of where you're at subconsciously. Like that reaction is a reflection of where you're at, right? And so like know that this is part of me, right? So like if I saw that with my kids, in fact, recently we were playing this like video game where you like do this farm and you can like meet these other people. And then eventually these people got married. And then that morning, all of a sudden it had hearts coming out of the bed and they were underneath the covers and it was wiggling. And it was like this little kid show, right? And when that moment came, and I talk about sex every day, every week for like 40 hours plus, and like I went, oh crap, and like my daughters were like, they ended up asking, what was that? And I said, I don't want to talk about it. I just missed it, man. And that is, again, a reflection of where I'm at. That it was like, oh no, scary, it got me. Right here I am with my 6, 4, and 2-year-old, Good for me to know, right? And actually, because it happened, I made it happen again. I like played that game again just to get it to that moment so that I could show my daughters and try again, right? Which I handled it better the second time, but let's talk about it, right? So then we get to choose what we're going to think. And in this process, right, it's very common for people to react in this like, oh no, we shouldn't watch this, is what I would say is one of the most commons, right? Slash with like a teenager might have a little bit of like, that's whoa mixed into it, Shouldn't is so powerless, and we want to move away from shouldn't. Go ahead. Instead, we want to go to this, I don't want that. We want to declare our own desire, right? I shouldn't look at that as so like weak, oh no, it's going to get me. When I don't want that is like a place of power. Like, no, I get to choose. Be like, the starting off point is be a chooser.
And the I shouldn't also kind of carries an undertone of, but I want to, right? And so it's not really processing that desire as much as it is just like trying to cover it up with like, oh, there's like, I feel this pull towards it, but I shouldn't. Without saying, I feel this pull, but I actually don't want that. Yeah. I'm actually choosing something different.
Yeah, and I think having that desire and choice separate matters there. Like just because you have a desire doesn't take away your ability to choose. Like I choose to do things that are against my desires constantly. You think I want to do the dishes ever? But I like choose to do them anyway, and I think that matters. Next, we want to go into our why, right? And this is where we're trying to get, like with kids, we're trying to get their ick back, Like, I don't want that movie sexy because it's one of the main reason for me is it's not mine, right? Like, that's not mine. Like, it's not my partnership, you know? I don't like that because it's kind of public. Like, it's showing me, like, even in that video game, like, it was showing this sexual intimacy. And I'm like, I just believe that's more private than that, you know? I don't want that because it could be temporary. It could be just about a moment. It's anonymous. It's an exchange. It's manipulative, right? And as we can help our kids identify what is not real, that gives them power, right?
Will you draw out like how you're adding
Yeah.
barriers?
I was doing this presentation at Wasatch High School, and as I was doing this presentation, I was talking about this, and this girl in the audience all of a sudden goes like, you know, and I was like, and afterwards, who wants to talk to the porn guy at high school after a presentation? But I like sought this girl down. I went and talked to her, and she was like, I was like, what was that? And she was like, you. My mom went to your class, and this is one of the very first class I taught forever ago. My mom went to your class, and she sat us down and had us watch this sex scene from this movie. And as we watched it, and it came to the part where it's a sex scene, she just went like, that's fake. And so then we all asked her, what do you mean, Mom? What do you mean that's fake? And she's like, well, sex is an exchange of fluids. There's no way that these people are laying naked together in bed, having sex, and then just going to sleep and waking up the next night with perfect makeup, not with this like flat pressed on my head hair. And it would be so freaking sticky, you know? And so now she's like, every single time I watch a movie with a sex scene now, my brain goes, that would be so sticky, right? Which is just so awesome, right? Is that parent helped her gain the ability to identify what was fake and what was real. Like, it's not just a magical moment. It can be magical and sticky, you know? And like that reality, I think, really helped this girl to be successful when she faced media, right?
Yeah, now she feels like a chooser instead of like she's just strung along by whatever media is offering up as the sexual message.
Okay, I think what she said is very important here, to like kind of visualize the different levels of power, right? Like, we're in this shouldn't moment. It's almost like here's the appeal of pornography, the darkness of pornography or whatever, and like our little dude is like, oh no, please don't get me in fetal position, you know? But then when he moves to this I don't want, again, we've got the darkness, it still exists, right? But now someone has a little bit of power, maybe like a little hand on hip sass going on, you know? Like, I don't freaking want this, right? Which gives them, again, power. Then when we get to this because that, now we've still got the darkness. Our dude has done this. I've got freaking power, right? But now he starts to put up barriers that are like, that's not mine. That's public. That's sticky, right? That like starts to dismiss how that is not actually real. We then want to transfer and teach sex's reality, right? Because sex is sticky, but it still is amazing. Like, this mom, I guess, was like, look, it's sticky, and it's sometimes even like sometimes you shower after, but sometimes those like post-shower after whatever moments, like, they're so freaking beautiful that like that's part of the emotional connection of sex, you know? And it's missing that. Like, this movie scene is missing that, right? And she also pointed out that similarly, like, there's this makeout moment, and then magically they're in the bedroom with the perfect lighting and stuff. And she's like, sometimes that like, we just kissed and we're downstairs in the couch and then we're going up to our bedroom, like that like excitement of going up there is also part of the emotional intimacy, but it's hard to show that in a movie. And so sometimes it skips that, right? Where then she starts to teach, like, I really want someone who chooses me. Wow, that's not how you spell chooses. Chooses me. I want something that's like emotional, right? And we can go through our other side of our victory chart here, like that's lasting, built, known, relationship, and considerate, right? Now, this individual who's fighting pornography is like, got his barriers up. And it's like, this is actually what I want. Like, that over there is what I'm looking for. And it actually, this is how someone changes their actual template, right? If people just get good at saying no to pornography, they'll never actually heal. Like, they have to eventually learn and chase a healthy sexual partnership, right? And that's the way that people actually find healing. Now, this is true with sexual abuse. This is true with sexual fear. Like, we can't just say no. We have to end up chasing something that is actually true.
And I love here that like you can see how now we've taken this moment that we think is scary or like we're trying to avoid or protect our kids from and used it to our advantage, right? And helped them, it becomes a conversation piece for us being able to share our own values and help them get educated enough so that they can form what they want to hold as their values. And it doesn't have to become this like scary thing that's going to get our kids or us or like subvert our attempts as parents. We can actually build off of it.
Connection, choice is more powerful than desire. And so we like to end with the choice. Like, I choose connection. I choose real life. I choose my human. I choose us. Like, I choose whatever, right? But I think it's important that a child or a human, an adult me, ends with choice, And like, this is what I actually want, right? This is the process of getting power. Like, this is a very universal process, Like, I do this when I'm like going to eat, It's like, all right, what am I going to eat? Like, what do I want? What is good about that? What is bad? Okay, I'm choosing this. Like, that process is used constantly. And it's the same with sex. Identify what is real, identify what's not, and then make a choice. Be the chooser of what you want. And even if you end up using pornography, see it as a choice. Because if you don't see it as a choice, you'll never be able to change it. Right? Like, you have to first gain power as a chooser. Now, as a parent, let's talk about, you had to transfer.
I wanted you to go back to one of the other slides where you wrote this one and talk about how.
Okay, so let's talk about this in this Instagram moment, right? We had this like Instagram moment of like, hey, look at my breasts, I'm super appealing in my bikini or whatever, right? And like some kid runs into that and his body turns on as it freaking should, Like, it turns on and he's like, oh my gosh, look at this, And it could be, what is this? Honestly, I bet most humans go immediately to this like, uh-oh, shouldn't, with a little bit of curious, And they're fighting shouldn't versus curious, It's so much more powerful, again, to go through this process of like, look, like, I don't want that. Because it's not my person. That person wasn't posting this going like, man, I hope Brigham gets to see me in my bikini today. Like, it's not for you. Like, it's really is for the masses. Like, I really want someone who chooses me in all the awesomeness that I am and all the crappiness that I am. And chooses me. Like, I choose connection. Now, someone who does this over and over and over and starts stacking wins is what we've been calling it recently in my office. Like, eventually they lose the appeal of pornography. Like, that isn't sex to them. They'll get their ick back. That ick fades away as someone consistently engages to pornography till eventually, 70% of individuals who have used violent pornography, which is level 5 pornography, it goes to 6, for more than 2 years are on the sex offenders list. So they've been caught, And like, their ick has disappeared over time, mainly because they've hidden from themselves and others also, but whatever, right? Like, we want that ick back. Get the ick back, And that happens by identifying fake and then chasing reality.
And that like fighting that up here at this first moment is way more effective than trying to put these boundaries around where it's been dripped all day. They've been pushing it and avoiding it all day long. Instead, you're processing it in the moment and can let it go. And when the next moment comes, you can process it and let it go.
This is our focus when people come in our office. Like, I'm afraid of them hiding, and so sometimes I'll have them report if they use pornography or not, but it is not my focus. Like, I honestly don't give a flying flip about how much freaking pornography someone uses in the first 2 months of our program. I don't care. Like, I know that if they can focus on wins and stack wins, their pornography use will go away. If they can be winning 80% of their moments by choosing to think about sex in a healthy way consistently, the pornography use will go away. It just happens every stinking time. And that's what really matters, right? And so as a parent, we want to be teaching this process, right? And the way that starts is by sharing our own process, right? Like with, we just shared one with you, right? Where that mom went back and watched a movie on purpose with her kids that she knew had a sex scene in it and just was like, that's not real. She just shared part of her process. She just shared part of her because of that. Like, it would have been awesome, so awesome. Like, I wish, and when I went and redid my freaking video game moment, when it came, I said, you know what? I don't really like that because it's not private, but I do like that it's showing how sex can connect this couple, right? And all I did was share my process, which helped my kids to be like, oh, I can think about this. You know, it's not that we have to like make them think certain things. I'm not going to ask my daughter, what do you think about that? You know, what do you think is real about this sex scene in a movie? No, I just want to share my process because then they will do theirs. As they hear a process, they will naturally process. Now, this shows up in so many moments. And our goal right now is to show you moments that you can use to share your process. We've talked so far really about like sex scenes in a movie. We have a couple more. Let's hit a couple more.
Do we want to ask them if they have moments that they want us to talk to?
No,
Okay.
I don't want to. I'd like to use ours.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, let's do ours. I'll go first. Let's do. Can you talk about your mannequin moment that you shared on the podcast?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I was walking into the store with my two boys that are 11. Well, they were 11 at the time and 9. And it was a sports clothing store. And two of the mannequins didn't have any clothes, like they hadn't been dressed yet. And these are mannequins that like had abs and like breasts. And like they were pretty well-defined mannequins because they were going to be wearing tight-fitted sporting clothes, right? And they were women mannequins. And so I walk in with my boys. And initially I thought like, I had just this like freeze moment, right? So for me as a parent to pause and think like, how am I feeling? And then to be able to share my process, like, I'm surprised, like those mannequins don't have any clothes. I'm saying kind of like what I feel and also what I see. Not really even putting any judgment on it or telling them what to think about it. I'm just saying, I'm surprised, like those mannequins don't have any clothes. It surprises me a little bit. And when I said that, one boy goes, yeah, I don't really like that. And he's now sharing his process. And the other boy just kind of listened to us process. Then when I just said, okay, let's go find the shoes. They're over in that corner. We go over, find the shoes. As we're checking out, we're going to be coming out some different doors and like kind of bypassing the mannequins. But my thought is like, are my boys going to look back at those mannequins again, right? And then I'm thinking like, I don't want to like hover and like be checking in on them. So I was trying to figure out like, how do I manage this situation? My oldest boy just like walked right out. My youngest boy, who hadn't spoken anything in that first initial moment, he turned back around and then he said, the mannequins have clothes now. And like, so the fact that he turned to look again wasn't a problem. And I was like so grateful that he wasn't trying to hide that he was looking again, right? To see. Like there was no fear of like these mannequins are dangerous or scary or like nakedness is something to be worried about. It was like, I can look, I can process, and I can speak to that process and share it as a family. It's an awesome moment.
It is such an awesome moment, right? And like, not only is you start processing out loud, your kids will mimic that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is especially true for young kids. Like they can't, like previous to like 8 or 9 years old, kids can't really disassociate and like reprocess themselves. They don't do a really good job at bird's eyeing themselves, right? That really happens later, right? So especially with young kids, like that's even more important to be sharing what you think and feel about it constantly. You know, it's just like, and honestly, it doesn't need to have to be every time, but pretty consistently. You know, like there's some great opportunities for this. One of them is like lyrics in a song. You know, like I love taking a teenager and I'm like, okay, let's look at your number one listened to song. Let's pull it out. Let's read what's real. Let's read the lyrics, and then you tell me what you think is neutral in your value system or outside. And we just go through, and that's it. And we're done. Am I going to tell him not to listen to music? Absolutely not. But do I want that kid to be aware of his influence so that it's not just blindly influencing him? Yes, abso-stinkin-lutely. Like that's the key here, is to bring this awareness, especially at a teenage level, right? Another moment that I really love, and it's hard to watch sex and then talk about what is good about sex or what isn't good about a certain sexual behaviors. I love animal documentaries. I freaking love them. I'm obsessed with animal documentaries anyway, so I own most of them. But like they are such an awesome opportunity to teach what is real sex and what is not. Because animals have sex in a myriad of ways. And they are an awesome opportunity to be like, you know what? I like that. I like that bird is spent hours and hours and hours building a nest and a home that will be safe for that family. I love that. Right? And that was part of and then like she chose him based on, can you provide a safe place for me and my kids? You know? And I think that's an awesome relationship and sexual information. You know? Do I love that this bird bites her on the neck and then like they have this like flutter, and then it's over? I don't like that. You know, I don't, and like, honestly, I said in front of my kids, like, I don't like that he just leaves after. Like, I like it when the animals stay together after. So like an albatross, you guys came here for an animal lesson, right? Like an albatross, they mate for life with one partner. They spend like years on the wing. Like they are just constantly on the wing. They don't touch land for years. When they come back, they will find their exact partner. Then they will like tap beaks together to greet each other. And I love that. And I just say out loud, I love that. I don't have to explain it every time. I love that. You know, then after they have sex, they like lean on each other. And I love that, right? And I point out that I stinking love that, you know? And it's good to have a mix of what you like and what you don't.
Yeah, like we were
like.
watching Cuttlefish Mate just the other day with my kids. And like it was talking about how like the female cuttlefish mates with multiple partners because that like is the best outcome for her like genetic diversity and whatever. To be able to just be like, oh yeah, like that's how it works for cuttlefish. I don't believe that that's like what's healthy for humans is to have multiple partners. There, I'm just sharing my thoughts. Also being able to share that like people think differently, right? And people have different values. And I think that's important for our kids to process in our own home in healthy ways rather than just like with fear and a lot of judgment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, like if you're a parent that's like, I want these moments, like one of the first things I would do is watch a animal documentary. In fact, we'll put one in the email that's like Animals in Love or something like that. Yeah. And like it's on YouTube. So like anybody could watch it, you know? And it's a great opportunity to just watch this and go like, what, and just say out loud what you like or don't like. One of those is the elephant seals, you know? And I like that he fight, like his partnership is so important. Him having children is so important to them that they fight sometimes to the death. Like I like that.
Like they don't eat for a long time.
Or they don't eat because they're just trying to maintain their harem. You know, I don't love that it's a harem. You know, I also don't love that like it looks like he's freaking crushing her when they have sex. You know, like I don't like that. That's uncomfortable. Like you look at the female seal's face, and she's like, you know, and like I don't like that. You know, and sometimes having a little humor to it with your teenagers will make it a little bit better. You know, but like it allows you to teach sexual values without watching sex. Because like I don't want to watch a bunch of porn and tell kids what I think is real or not real. You know, but like animal documentaries, I think are a great. This is if I was going to do this in a structured way, animal documentaries is what I would use. Yeah, but let me tell you, there are opportunities freaking everywhere. They are endless. Let me give you a couple that you might not think of. One of those is I get home from work and I find my wife and we kiss. I am right now teaching my kids that physical intimacy, which includes sex, is a powerful connector. I'm teaching that just by doing it, but it's even a little more powerful when I say it. I come home and my daughters are like trying to talk to me and I'm like, just a minute, I need to give mom a kiss. I've missed her. You know? Or when I kiss her and I notice that my kids are looking, I'm like, I'm so excited for you to have a partner one day. You know? And I can share my process about our own physical intimacy because that is the key to teaching sex as a connector. It is very hard to sit down and formally teach, this is how you're going to feel during sex, and this is the way that it's going to change your relationship. Do you know what's an awesome way to do it is demonstrate and speak to it. This can even be done by a grandparent. Like my mom, and like she got remarried to this guy. He's freaking awesome. But he is just like, gives her this hand squeeze and it's just like, oh, I'm so excited to be around you. And my daughters are going, this is love. You know? And it's a phenomenal teacher of connection.
Yeah, and you probably point that out, right?
Yes.
To take those moments, like I love that he and grandma hold hands like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and you're speaking to it. You're actually giving verbiage so that they can process it because they're going to get different messages everywhere. So the more like intentional you can be about actually putting words to what physical intimacy means to you and your partner, now your kids are going to be like, oh, I get it. Rather than like, wait, what does that mean? Why do they do that? You know, like,
why do I want to kiss this
why
person?
do I want to kiss? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know like my son was watching me and my husband kiss a couple weeks ago and he was like, you guys have been doing that a lot lately. And it was more than just like the hello, goodbye kiss. It was like a little bit more emotional, right? And for him to pause and notice that and then like say out loud, like, they've been doing that more. Now he's seeing that like there's patterns in relationships. And like there are times where like mom and dad feel closer and more connected, and times when like, oh, that's not happening as much, right? He's seeing that realistic version of that's different than the rom-com, sex is just always this magical thing and a relationship just happens. You better choose the right one, but like, oh, they have to work for it. And sometimes it's better than it is others.
One that a mom told me about recently was she was watching it's like a Frozen level movie. It wasn't Frozen itself, but it was something like that. Anyway, some like Disney animated movie. And then in the moment that they kissed, it changes. Like there's a crescendo that kids feel. It's partially done via music, which like kids feel, and then the kiss, and then the mood changes, And she was just like, wow, that seemed to change their relationship. That kiss seemed to change their relationship. That's it. And like for a kid to even just be aware and actually processing that out loud is so awesome. Another opportunity with young kids is like kids playing dolls, Another opportunity for kids is like, I love to check like what kind of things is my kid watching. And I find things that I don't want my kid doing, But like if I find on a teenager, like this is things I'm not watching, let's look at it together and let's process it out loud right now. Like, yeah, I saw that you saw this reel. Let's look at it and let me tell you how I would process it. I'm not going to put you in the pressure spot of you figuring out how to process it. But maybe I saw this reel of this girl doing this, like, they don't really twerk anymore, but whatever dumb dance they're doing now, right? And I'm like, okay, this is how I would process that. It's like, oh, wow, that person's beautiful, but like, that's not my person. Like, I want someone who saves that kind of stuff for me, And like, just to share that and not make this kid, hey, why were you watching this? Process it out loud for me. To just say mine, and then to let him reprocess in my presence is going to naturally put my values in his. The more that anyone can process their sexual values in your presence, like naturally, you're going to be woven in there. And so if they can be thinking about it in your presence, that's like one of the best things. Yeah.
I can see myself getting flustered and not knowing what to say.
Yeah.
So is there a way to, I guess you can like bring it up later? Hey, when we saw this today.
Yeah.
And like,
oh,
put it in revert or
yes.
after the fact? Or
yeah, that's
totally.
good too.
Yeah.
I would take this nature documentary and I would watch it and I would prep.
Yeah. Speak it out loud. Have like
on your own,
your partner there or somebody else there. You can talk about it if you want to like.
Once you do it 10 times, you'll be shocked at how easy it is.
Mm-hmm. But also, for sure, I mean, there are moments all the time that I miss where I like freeze up and I'm like, I don't know how to handle this one. And then like sometimes I'm great and like follow up again in 24 hours and be like, hey, remember when we saw this? This, like, I kind of was surprised and didn't know what to say, but this is how I've been thinking about it since then. This is what I think about that moment. Sometimes I miss that, right? Like if it's 2 weeks later, then I'm just going to wait for the next moment to show up.
And if you felt like that moment was big, you can recreate. Like it happened to me with the video game, And like it was big enough in my head that I'm like, I'm recreating this because this is not the way I want this done in my house, And so, yeah. And again, you're not going to catch them all. And that's totally fine. You really have like a 24-hour window where it's still present in the kid's mind. And you can be like, hey, I've been thinking about this. This is what I actually think about it. Beyond that, it's not going to have a lot of emotional weight. Your kid's brain has stored that already somehow.
Like my husband and I sometimes will watch shows and like after that I'll be like, that was such a good one. Like that had some messages that I want our kids to hear. Like we're going to watch that together. And I'll like have kind of pre-prepped and practice that. Other times like I have to pass a billboard like 6 or 7 times before I'm like ready to speak out loud to my kids. Like, hey, like they say that they're advertising blankets, but what she's wearing and the way she's posed does not seem to be advertising blankets. That like, seems like they're just advertising sex. Yeah. Yeah,
weird blanket.
Mm-hmm. And my kids will say that sometimes, like in movies, like this part is weird. I had my kids say that to me during a Star Wars movie. This part is weird. That is a sign that like he's confused in that moment. And I was like, yeah, he's putting a lot of pressure on her about how he feels about their relationship without really taking time to listen and understand what she wants from their relationship. And he's like, oh yeah, now I understand what was weird about it. Like you could feel this like kind of relief in that moment.
And as a parent starts to put words on it, they go like, I can put words on it, And they like, even if they don't agree with you, like they'll be like, well, I don't like that, the way she said that. And then they'll start to put their own words on it, but it still engages the rational side of their brain, not just the instinctual, emotional portion of their brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I think that like you bring up another point, like for me, when I have older kids and trying to shift into this, like speaking out my process, it's sometimes helpful if I speak out my process in things that aren't just sexual. So now they're hearing like, oh, it's not just sexual things that mom's going to speak up on. And so there's this kind of like, why is mom like super worried, or is this like a dangerous area? But like, oh, I'm going to talk about several things in the movie, and the sexual things are going to be in there. So it feels a little bit more natural. But I also like something else you're saying is like, think about the difference for your kid to hear like, oh, I don't like that, versus like, let's move, hide your face or turn that off. Like that sends this message of scary, dangerous, something could get you, you don't have choice, versus you can see something and process it. Here's how I do it, you know.
Awesome.
You are the chooser.
It happened to me like recently. We were walking to the beach and there was like, we were going up some stairs and we are going to go back down. And then like these thong bikinis are kind of in, I guess. And there's like woman in the thong is right at like my eye level. And I was just like, I just like turned and stopped and I said, I don't like that, you know? And it's easy, right? And even if you can't get to what you feel about it, if you can just name what it is, those mannequins don't have clothes. Mm-hmm. Or like that man brought up his siblings, or like that's a butt, you know? Yeah. Like even naming what it is can really like
relieve
settle
pressure.
So much tension, because that I can't think about it. You know what that is? It's trauma. Like that's what trauma is I can't process this, you know? And we're having little traumas constantly, sometimes created by this fear that we promote, you know? Yeah. Okay, we have one more way to attack this as a parent, right? And this last one is formal teaching, is like the process of formal teaching something. Now, to us, there are a few formal conversations that I think need to be hit in the home, right? How do the bodies work, you know? And I've learned more and more and more that the earlier you can start these, the better, you know? Like our podcast, if you listen to our podcast, like I have me teaching my daughter about a year ago, who was 6 at the time. And then we just did a group one with me and all my daughters, and it's my 7-year-old, 4-year-old, and 2-year-old that are all sitting here learning. And honestly, it's not uncomfortable for them. In fact, if you're uncomfortable with it, the earlier you start, the easier it's going to go, because they don't feel you're emotional.
Yeah, you can really let them set the tone with like their innocence and curiosity.
Yeah, then there's puberty, which like I think honestly puberty is a moment as a parent that you can really freaking knock out of the park, you know, because you know what's going to happen to their body. Like you can look up online what's going to happen to their body, you know, and if you tell them, hey, this is coming, one, when it comes, they'll feel normal, and 2, that they're going to go, oh my gosh, my parent gets me and my body. You just got all this validation for you as a parent, get it, because you just taught it early, right? And so if you can pre-pubescently teach kids what's happening, I think that really makes a difference. Now, puberty starts for your kid when someone who they think is their peer starts puberty, right? Your kid might not start and not have like a period until they're like 14, and might not bud until they're like 12 or whatever, right? But like as soon as the first kid that she sees as her peer starts budding, puberty has started for her.
Which honestly, sometimes that's siblings.
Yes, that is, which can be a couple years older.
Yeah, if you have a sister that's starting a period, or she's got breast budding, and you're 10, you know, you have a daughter that's 10, the 10-year-old is going to be learning and trying to understand what is happening to my friend, my sister.
In an optimal world, I would recommend hitting a puberty conversation at 9 or earlier. Yeah. Really, like, the average age of puberty just keeps dropping, which it's kind of based on genetics. It's also based on like how much fat someone has, but like it's happening earlier and earlier, you know? And so I would try to have a conversation as early as possible, pretty early about it.
Yeah. And then the other 2 conversations are just like relationships, right? How do relationships work? What do they mean? Why are they important? And then like we've talked a little bit about sex as a connector, that emotional relationship building aspect of sex.
And although the sex as a connector one in particular is a hard one to teach if we're not demonstrating it via physical intimacy, you know, otherwise like your frame of reference is really hard to teach, like, hey, you know how this is happening. But there is a time to like sit down and be like, hey, I kiss mom and this is why. I hug mom, this is why. You come home late at night and the door's locked, this is why.
Yeah.
Mom and I are trying to privately connect. And sometimes that's sexual, and sometimes that's emotional, and sometimes that's recreational. But like mom and I are trying to privately connect.
Yeah. And those are powerful. Like this part, sex as a connector, is going to be getting dripped all throughout, hopefully, right? If we are speaking our process and speaking what physical intimacy means. But then, yeah, we have these formal conversations and they just kind of solidify that and anchor it. And they give kids an opportunity like, oh, I can actually come and talk to mom or dad about about questions. Or when I am getting married, like they're a source of information on how that's going to go, because you've had like more of a formal conversation around it as well.
My intention as a professional is to have one of these every year, at least. Where like my daughters are, again, like they're pretty much 2, 4, and 6. They're actually now going to be 7, 5, and 3 or whatever, you know. But like last year I had one individually with this kid, and there were individual ones, and then this year I did a group one, and I plan on alternating between individual and group conversations and doing them every year for every kid. And now they'll start with body, then eventually we'll move to puberty, then eventually we'll have more relationship stuff in it, and then eventually more sex as a connector, you know, with that kind of comes with relationships. Now, there are some principles. I want to get moving here. There are some principles for a formal teaching. First off, you got to evaluate your baggage. Like you come with baggage, and like you need to know what it is. Like I come with the baggage that like men really want it and women give it. That it's not, women don't really want it, but they'll just like, sure, I guess it's my wifely duty. And then my men are constantly being the chasers, you know? And so I need to recognize that so that when I teach, I can try to push against it, right? Because I do not want that to be the influence on my kids, you know? The next thing is to establish an anchor. Like if you choose to listen to me teaching, my body anchor is your body is unfreaking believable. I want you to know that like I think the female body is unbelievably amazing, and I'm so excited for you one day to be a creator with your body.
Yeah, I think like when you have a conversation with your spouse or your partner, whoever's going to be teaching with you, coming up with like, what is our overall message that we want to send? And what words can we use to say that message at different parts during this formal teaching moment? So for me, one of them is like, I am excited to teach you about this. Like, I want my kids to think that I'm not just like doing it because I need to and like I have to, but like I'm excited for you to learn about sex. Like, that's one of my anchors. Yeah. So that's what that's kind of trying to
and
teach.
It gives you, your kids are going to go on, especially if they're young, but like all kids will go on these random side notes, you know,
while you're teaching.
Yeah, and an anchor is just a great way to keep bringing you back.
Yeah, helps you kind of transition when you're like, I don't know where we're going to go yet. Hit your anchor, and with that in your mind, you'll like naturally know where you need to go.
Yeah. Obviously, like setting makes a big difference. Like, like whether it's a group setting, because sometimes I think groups can be really powerful. You know, to be able to do this as a family or whatever. I think there also are like private settings. You know, like your kids are going to be asked. They're going to be mentioned at school, like when they go to maturation or whatever, they're going to be like, your parents probably talked to you about this, you know? And you do want an anchor memory that a kid can go to. And so like a one-on-one formal conversation about sex before they hit maturation is important, right? Because then they're going to know, oh, my parents are a source for me. Which again, the goal here is to become the primary sexual educator in your home, right? Or to enable your kids to then eventually be there, like, right? Like that's the goal, is to like, let me be an educator for you, right? And like, that's the purpose of these formal teachings. Now, the goal, right, is that we have all of these drip moments, and then eventually our formal teaching just like solidifies and puts all of it in context. Mm-hmm. You know, like that's the purpose. Like really the drip is where more good stuff is happening. But the formals really do like put all of these little drips in order again, and it organizes it for their brain. Right?
And we kind of talked about like some of these things that go into preparing for a formal conversation, but like I do talk to a lot of parents that like they're so worried about doing it right that they just put it off and put it off and put it off. And the truth is like the thing that we really believe is like just doing it is going to be way better than not, right? So just doing it and then recognizing like if it doesn't go well, you're going to be teaching it again. And you're going to have moments where you're going to follow up and say like, oh, hey, like yesterday when we talked about this, there was something I forgot to mention. Or like, hey, remember when we had this conversation? Like, I hope that the message that came through was, and you hit your anchor again. And so doing it not good or not having everything kind of like all the stars lined up can be a big barrier for people to just make it happen. I was working with one mom and we were talking through like how she wants to teach this with her family. And we were preparing, and then I was texting her and asking how it went. And she was like, actually, my daughter asked a question. And so we just went for it. And I was like, great. That is so awesome. Like, how much better for that girl to feel like her question was answered rather than like, oh, like it was avoided and then it wasn't talked about. And then they kind of brought it up a couple months later. So like any of these things that we're giving you as ways to go into that conversation, don't let them be barriers for having the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to hit follow-up last thing.
Okay.
Follow-ups don't have to be giant, but they do need to happen, and sometimes they're really natural like that, like honestly, it could just be like, hey, I really enjoyed that conversation. Like that's a follow-up because now that just got brought up back to that kid's mind. It got processed again and then it got stored again, which just gave that, because they've now thought about it at least twice, more weight in their life, And so just like me going by my daughter and being like, hey, thanks for participating in that convo with us. Done. Like that's a follow-up. It doesn't need to be this like, hey, what do you think? I think sometimes parents are also sometimes looking for, did I do a good job?
Yeah.
And like, let that go. Like you did what you did, just like check in with them, and it could be like, I would have very little, they need to talk. Like I would have almost all of it as, let me tell you where I'm at with it. Right. And then naturally they'll actually bring it up if they want to. Or they'll say like, oh yeah, what about this? I did this to my daughter once and she was like, what was this part? And she was asking about one of the pictures that we used, and so they'll do that quite naturally. And so I would be looking for a 24-hour, a couple day, we say like a 3-day, and then like a 10-day, and one of those probably by each parent. We're so grateful you women are here. I freaking love it. I would do everything I could if you have a male partner to involve your male partner as much as possible. Women really wonder what their dad thinks of them. Boys also naturally are probably going to go to their dads. And like, in my opinion, like I think the male being the sexual educator is even more important to try to get your partner involved. If you have a male partner. Yeah, it matters. And I know it's hard. And like, honestly, my advice to dads is like, 1, step the frick up. And then 2 is like, learn the body. You can teach the body. Like, yeah, it's going to be hard for me to teach to my daughters what sex is like emotionally. It's going to be hard. I want her to know what I think it's like for a man. And then I'm going to try to let my wife teach what it's like for a woman. But I can freaking learn the body and teach the body. Like the body doesn't need to be like, I can book teach. This is what a vulva does. This is the purpose of your urethra. This is what a vagina does. This is what the uterus does. Like I can teach that, And so like I would be trying to, as a partner, to push everything I could that's teaching about the body to the male partner if you can.
Including puberty.
You can learn it. I believe in you. Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for being here today. We're going to hang out and clean up, and if you'd like to talk to us individually, then freaking awesome. But we're so grateful for you coming. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this discussion today. We hope it was valuable for you and your families. Our website, trueconnectionsrecovery.com, has a bunch of resources that you can access to get support from us.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways we're trying to help individuals, right? Whether it's through like individual recovery, like partner support, even like parental support, like how can I set my home up as a place for success?
Yep. We will be putting like technology management resources, other educational tools, or like workshops that might be up and coming in the area.
Just trying to provide ways for like families to feel supported, right? And so all of that you can find there on that website.
The more that this gets shared and like as you talk about it with others that like the discussions kind of flow and we can all grow in this area together.
Yeah, we really succeed as a community.
Yep.
Thank you.